I welcome again Dr. Subramania sir for continuing our case series in respiratory cases. And thank you very much, sir, Srinivas sir, for your presence.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also appreciate Dr. Mahesh Kore's enthusiasm in presenting the cases and taking active participation. Also, I congratulate Dr. Rupali managing such a difficult case. We will start the discussion. Dr. Rupali.
Rupali Patel will present the case. Okay, instead of me presenting, Rupali will present the case. She has taken and she has agreed. Thank you, Rupali, for that. And you can continue now.
Yeah.
Now, we have with us Dr. Professor Srinivasan, former head of the department from JIPMER Pondicherry, very senior pediatrician. So many of you might be students. We acknowledge his presence and his expert opinion as well, along with us. From personal myself and from the academicians over here and the practitioners, sir, we welcome to you, sir. Prasanna, can you just also formally welcome him?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Dr. Srinivas sir is a HOD JIPMER Pondicherry. He is a very senior pediatrician, 76 old. For today's meeting, we are having 3 milestones for us. One is Dr. Mahesh Kore sir, then Dr. Subramaniam sir, and Dr. Srinivas sir. Thank you, Srinivas sir, for
thank you. Very kind of you. Thank you for permitting me.
Yeah, Prasanna want to say 3 idiots probably.
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. It is
very
difficult for secretary to handle all these things.
Yeah, very nice joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rupali madam, please continue.
Okay, sir. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So today we will going to discuss one interesting respiratory case. So this patient was actually referred to us by Dr. Kore sir. And this was a 2-year-old boy, second issue of non-consanguineous marriage, resident of Nipani, Karnataka, and Muslim by religion. He was admitted in April of this year and presented with fever since 8 days, respiratory distress since 2 days, and there was a documented hypoxia at Kore sir's hospital. He was there for 1.5 days and then was shifted to us because of hypoxia and respiratory distress. So we will discuss in detail about the fever. So the fever was intermittent, insidious in onset. Initially it was low grade and then gradually the intensity of fever was increased. Initially the interferal period, the child was normal, playful, but since last date, 2 days of the admission, the fever intensity was raised and the fever was not responding to antipyretics. The child has also become irritable, sick looking, and there was decreased oral intake. The child has respiratory distress also. The mother had noticed the increased chest movements and distress, but he was comfortable with that distress, orally eating, though the oral intake was reduced, but he was taking orally some intake was there. Then we will see the distress video. So how to minimize it?
Escape करूँगे पहिल्यांदा.
Okay.
You press escape. Now only.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Sir. So this was the respiratory distress. Can you all see this?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I will play it again. So this was the respiratory distress. Okay. So after eliciting the history, the mother gave the history of dry cough on and off since 3 months. See, this cough was not bothering so much to the child, and after asking so many questions, she gave this history. So since there was a history of dry cough since 3 months, we taken the negative history for to rule out the causes, other causes. Like there was no history of weight loss or TB contact. There was no history of allergic tendencies in the family. The fever was not associated with rash. The history was not suggestive of any foreign body aspiration or was not suggestive of GRD also. Since this patient presented to us in the pandemic situation of COVID, we asked the history of travel of any family member to the containment zone or any similar complaints in the family, which was not there. Then we took the past history. The past history was hospitalization of this child was happened at 5 months of age, which was there for 8 days. After that, the child was recovered fully and was asymptomatic till then. And the birth history, immunization history, developmental history was normal. So this child presented to us in the emergency department with high grade fever, with respiratory distress, with documented hypoxia, with significant past history. So from this history, so what differentials we thought of, that whether this respiratory, this distress was the origin was respiratory, cardiac or metabolic. So the metabolic goes last in the list because the symptoms were not like that, like polyuria or developmental delay. So metabolic goes in the last. There was no history of failure to weight gain also, or feeding diaphoresis or recurrent respiratory tract infection. So cardiac cause also is less likely. So mainly the cause of the distress looks respiratory in origin. So in respiratory, the first differential comes in this age group of 2 years of age, like hyperreactive airway disease. Then second thing, whether it is a neglected foreign body, and the child had dry cough since 3 months and then suddenly had presented with fever and respiratory distress since of acute origin. Then tuberculosis should be kept in mind because the history was for 3 months, dry cough on and off. Since the child presented in this pandemic zone, viral and the documented hypoxia was also there along with the respiratory distress, COVID and H1N1 was also one of the cause for the, one of the differential for the distress. Then we will proceed towards examination. This child was conscious, irritable, febrile, and was sick looking. Had a tachycardia of 156. BP was 98 by 58 millimeter of mercury. Tachypnea was there with a rate of 48, and saturation was 89% on room air. Pallor was present, and bilateral inguinal lymph nodes were there, which were non-matted, non-tender, and about 1 centimeter. There were no other lymph nodes, like cervical, axillary lymph nodes were not there. There was no icterus, clubbing, cyanosis, or edema. Then we, by anthropometry wise, this child's weight was 9 kg, height 85 centimeter, head circumference 47 centimeter. So there was grade 1 PM. The child was not stunted, averagely grown child. So on systemic examination, so on respiratory system examination, on inspection, the trachea was central, chest was symmetrical. There was a tachypnea. Lower intercostal retractions were there, and nasal flaring was also there. On auscultation, the breath sounds were equal on both sides. There were no craves, no wheeze. It was like a silent chase with respiratory distress. On cardiovascular examination, there was no precordial bulge. Apex impulse was just lateral to left midclavicular line, that was normal. Heart sounds were normal. There was no murmur, no abnormal sounds. On per-abdominal examination, hepatomegaly was there with liver span of 9 centimeter, which was non-tender. The liver was soft to feel, and the margins were palpable. Right lobe of liver was not palpable. There was a splenomegaly, which was 3 centimeter below the left costal margin, soft to feel, non-tender, and splenic notch was also palpable. There was no evidence of fluid in the abdomen. Umbilicus was central and normal. So this was the X-ray we got as the child arrived. So we will see in detail about this X-ray. This is a chest X-ray PA view, which is well centralized, well exposed, with the CP angles clear, cardiophrenic angles are clear, with bilateral homogeneous opacities, and the cardiac shadow is normal. There is no cardiomegaly. So this X-ray was so bad, but it was not coinciding with the child's condition. Means the distress was not that bad compared to the X-ray. So after that X-ray, we will and examination and history. This child, 2 years old male child with high grade fever, with respiratory distress, with hypoxia, with silent chest, and with hepatosplenomegaly, chest X-ray was showing bilateral homogeneous opacity. Then we proceeded with the management. So again, we will see the differentials.
Yeah.
So we will see the differentials after the examination and chest X-ray. So as the cardiac cause, metabolic cause has ruled out, the first our diagnosis, hyperreactive airway disease, is gone from the X-ray. Foreign body aspiration has also gone from the X-ray. Tuberculosis remains as per the X-ray also, and viral should be considered because the X-ray is also bad. The distress was there in 2 days, and fever was there. After the X-ray, another differential comes to us, our mind was the interstitial lung disease, looking at the X-ray, respiratory distress, and the history. Yes,
Could we stop
sir,
here and can discuss here?
Okay, sir.
Yanke?
Yeah.
So,
can I go to the first slide, please?
yeah. Rupali, go to the first slide. I will start with the first.
Yeah. See, this child is a 2-year-old child. That's fine. A fever of around a week.
Yes, sir.
And respiratory distress and hypoxia. Now,
Yes,
fair
sir.
enough. Anybody would say somebody with fever, respiratory distress, and hypoxia could be simple inflammation bar infection. You know, that's straight away very simple from the first slide.
Yes, sir.
But can I just go to the video? I mean, I don't know, but my comments on the video will be little. Rupali, sorry for making the video again.
No problem.
See, what I wanted, before you play the video, I'll tell, you have all watched the video, but how I would watch the video, don't play it. Okay, you play it again you have to play again. Once I tell you, please observe the video carefully. Even if it is few seconds, it's very valuable for us. In the video, okay, look at the type of respiratory distress on inspection. This is very, very valuable to me. And I just hold on for a while. And what I wanted you to observe is it pneumonia? Let me straight away come to that, because you have fever, respiratory distress, hypoxia. It's not pneumonia. Simple. I'll tell you why. In pneumonia, you will have bilateral chest flaring, but look at the is far more than the intercostal as well as subcostal. Look at the type of distress. This makes me to tell you that probably the obstruction or the pathology is more proximal or maybe even extrathoracic or intrathoracic, but major airway compression.
Okay, sir.
Am I coming to the localization of the distress? See, you are very right in suspecting a foreign body in the
opacity is bilateral, and then we were worried whether we are dealing with COVID. In April, it was a hype actually.
Correct.
And it was fitting into that silent chest, happy hypoxia, and all these things. So we straightforward directly referred this patient to the higher center, and the story goes like that. Okay.
Okay. My inputs further.
Yeah.
Now let us look at let us analyze this sick-looking child. Is this sick-looking is because of an infection or because of hypoxia? I think Dr. Mahesh Kore nicely answered. The sick look or irritability was more because of hypoxia than because of infection. So therefore, to me at this stage, although I started with a kind of infection, now at least to me infection appears to be lower within the second or third, fourth slide itself, because none of the infections would rather cause hypoxia, and so significant hypoxia, so much of recession. You just imagine a suppuration in the lung with tugging of the suprasternal area, I mean recessions, and the child is having a low grade fever, but playful interfebrile period normal. You know, this takes to me a situation where there is obstruction more than infection,
Okay.
and a possibility of a non-infectious etiology over an infection.
Okay.
It will also take to me an etiology which would not cause high grade fever to start with, like any suppurative lung disease.
Okay.
So they would have started with a high grade fever, not some low grade fever coming on to a significant fever on day 6, day 7, day 8, like this baby which it behaved.
Okay.
The very fact that this child was little playful
Yeah.
is something which makes me to think of at least something unusual in this child. That's fair enough at this stage.
Okay.
Let me go further to the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
slide. So,
yeah.
because I would be dealing too much of imagination into this. Now, this dry cough to me is sufficient enough to tell me that either there is an airway involvement or airway compression. One of them. I think I have deliberated on this enough, but I would look into further evidences. Now, all these histories to me is what is most important to me is that, what is the context? How was the child before this? See, like, because is it a chronic pre-existing lung disease and this was just incidental flare-up, or is it a de novo phenomenon? This is very, very important to me. And I think Rupali and Corey have done very good job in telling us that the child was apparently and probably fantastic and normal, further evidenced by normal anthropometry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, sir, Dr.
To me, grade
Srinivas,
1
sir,
because I'm clubbing with general examination, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But in otherwise thriving child, so whatever we are thinking is of at least recent onset. Anyway, I will wait for your comment.
Subbu, yeah. I was not thinking of extra airway obstruction at that point of time.
Okay.
To be very true with you, I was thinking of why he has a hypoxia, and distress was there, but not to that proportion as seen in X-ray. I was worried about the X-ray.
Correct.
And that's why I thought of a parenchymal disease more of and that too of interstitial lung disease, and that is causing hypoxia and can come in any viral infection as a COVID situation is there. So, Srinivas sir, do you want to put some light on this?
Yeah, actually, I also saw the video. So I feel the intercostal retraction is quite significant. So there must be lower. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So because the video shows distinctly the intercostal retraction in all this thing more on the right side, and the right side chest only must slightly less than the left side. That's what appeared from the picture, frontal view.
Sir.
So I think I'm thinking of more of a parenchymatous disease. Of course, X-ray, subsequently had shown that. But he has also a point, very good point, Dr. Subramanian. So let us see how it goes about.
Okay.
The silent chest, that is the only thing which is this thing.
Yeah, worrisome.
So, yeah. Okay.
But for the viewers, may not be related to this case. Whenever you see an intercostal recession, it is a sign of localization.
Yeah.
And whenever you see suprasternal or substernal recessions, it is not having that localizing value. Although we generally say
it is
suprasternal is upper airway and substernal is probably bilateral. It is fine, but you should not be too much on that so that you miss the other things. So, so fair enough to just have a hint, not going too much on that. Okay, next one. So fair. I think you can skip these slides.
Yeah.
For want of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
See,
so
I don't think you should rule out cardiac and metabolic to come to respiratory in this child, madam. If you have straight away intercostal retractions, this is a respiratory disease.
Okay.
And unlikely to be a cardiac disease at all, because cardiac disease cannot start with fever of 8 days and past being normal. Hyperreactive airway disease is out for me in absence of wheeze and minimal plus or minus dry cough, non-episodic. And
this was just prior to the examination.
The history,
fair enough. No, but many of the things will be out for us. Let me come to respiratory examination. The respiratory examination will only show us it is a bilateral disease.
Yeah.
Correct. That's all. Nothing more than that. But examination of the abdomen, showed me that there is a splenomegaly which is not explained by respiratory distress. Sometimes push down liver spleen can happen, but more in infancy than 2-year-old. But this spleen is significant to me. So at this stage, my question is, are we dealing with a primary respiratory disease or is it a multi-system disease with respiratory manifestations? You know, this question should be there in everybody's mind. And suppose if it is hepatosplenomegaly with respiratory, then it can be primary respiratory disease, and hepatosplenomegaly can be part of an infection which we are dealing. Many times in many viral infections we do have that.
Okay.
But this spleen is not just spleen. When in respiratory infections, if you get an hepatospleno, it will be just a palpable liver, I mean, plus minus spleen.
This is significant.
Not like, you know, quite a significant splenomegaly. So this will keep my antenna high. The answer to the respiratory disease lies in the cause of splenomegaly.
Okay.
And the causes of splenomegaly should have an answer in the respiratory. Either way.
Both are related.
If you are a gastroenterologist, you know, you should try to find the answer in the respiratory. If you are a pulmonologist, you should try to find the answer in the spleen. So that's how, I mean, for a general pediatrician, you should take both. Right? So therefore, for me, this is something which is significant. But I will tell you, first of all, I'll thank somebody for really palpating liver and spleen in the clinics. Nowadays, nobody palpates. Only after ultrasound they palpate. So therefore, I would congratulate the clinician for picking up spleen, because I will tell you, liver is not missed, but spleen is generally missed by the practicing pediatrician. So this lesson is very, very important, because entire investigations, the way it goes, will be guided by the splenomegaly that we have found. Can I go to the next one?
Yes.
I'll comment on the X-ray. This X-ray is a beautiful X-ray. This will almost complete our diagnosis. I'll tell you why. Now on this X-ray, I can see that there is paratracheal shadows, which probably are consistent with bilateral or probably lymphadenopathy, mediastinal lymphadenopathy or mediastinal widening, to be duly considered. But let me suppress that for a while. You look at the lung shadows. They're homogeneous. They are of different sizes, and they are rounded. And look at the parenchyma shadows apart from the rounded shadows. If this is a 60-year-old adult, I will tell you straight away one diagnosis that it is secondaries. I will tell you why. I think I'm making my message on the X-ray very clear, and I will tell you why further. Is it an alveolar shadow or an interstitial? To me, this is not an alveolar shadow, because this is not synonymous with consolidations, bilateral consolidation. In bilateral consolidation lung, you will get opacities, no doubt, but the opacities will not be well demarcated like this. And look at the area of the lung in between the opacities. It is pitch dark. Pitch dark. You look at the air outside the X-ray, outside the chest. I will show you. I don't know this. Can you see? Can you show in the power? I mean, you are with your pointer.
This is outside the air.
This is the air, and you show some air in the show the air in. See, look at that pitch dark. You cannot get normal lung in a pneumonia, and you cannot get air in the pneumonia unless there is pneumothorax. So therefore, this to me is an interstitial shadow, and this to me is not a parenchymal consolidation. I don't know, I may be wrong, but to me, cardia is normal. So therefore, I am looking at an X-ray interstitial deposit in the background of, during the time of the COVID when this was presented. You know, there is always, I mean, we are biased by the epidemic. Truly, if you are led by that side of investigations, fair enough. There is full justice and full marks to that. But what I should additionally see in this X-ray, suppose if you are the physician, you should look at the axilla and the neck. I mean, sometimes you don't palpate the axilla. And in this, at least, I'm not finding anything in any nodes. But although I was mentioned about 1 centimeter node in the inguinal region, to me, it is insignificant. I tell you, 1 centimeter nodes in inguinal region in a playing child you will get. For that, but in this particular child who is symptomatic, everything becomes significant to me. you know, like, so now I am looking at some kind of disease which is non-respiratory, non-parenchymal, interstitial, probably benign, malignant, we don't know, but not the category of infection.
Subbu can think right
can
here.
I go to the next X-ray?
One minute.
For a while?
Subbu can think right here there is some non-infective cause, but we initially thought of only infection, and that is to interstitial lung disease, maybe infiltrative lung disease, and then we proceeded further. Okay. We have to confess that.
Okay, sir.
Make a point.
Yeah.
In the X-ray, in the right angle of the this thing below the ear, there seems to be a lymph node. I don't know whether it is, it is the rotation effect of
it's rotation, I think, sir.
Yeah,
rotation
could be, but it is quite solid. This thing when compared to this thing.
Which one, sir?
Neck swelling, sir, is referring to neck swelling.
Neck. No, sir, no. There was no lymph node.
Okay, because no, from the picture there is a bulge. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, should we proceed the case?
No, further, Rupali. Okay. If I were to do this, I usually what I do in my practice is, suppose I'm just extending further. You must look at all the ribs one by one. Even if you find one lytic lesion in any of the skeleton, you are finished. I mean, like,
diagnosis.
That's very, very important. See, I think I will closely look at every ribs. And how to look at the ribs? Rupali, can you just tilt this slide? Can you go back to, I mean, I just show you how to see the ribs. I mean, just for the academic interest. Can you come to, I mean, can you escape?
Escape, yeah.
Escape. And I'll just show you. Now, can you click on that X-ray and just tilt it? Make it sideways. No, there only on the top there is a okay, rotator. You do whatever you want.
Either. Oh, green button hai na?
Green button hai na top mein. Yeah. You twist it, tilt it. Don't worry, tilt it, completely tilt it. Make it 90 degrees tilt. And now leave it in any position. Doesn't matter. Now you go to slideshow. I will show you how an illusion works. Now you will see only ribs. This is the way to see ribs. Because if you see in the previous film, I will again undo it and show it to you. When you see this, you will see, because our mind is set for lungs and cardia so much that we don't see, we cannot undo it and see the ribs. I'll give an example. When we auscultate heart sounds, we suppress mentally the respiratory sounds, and when we are auscultating for respiratory, we suppress the heart sounds mentally. We do that. Same way, we have to suppress the illusion of parenchyma to see the ribs, and this is the best way to see the ribs. And can you see the ribs now very well?
Yeah,
excellent, isn't it? So this is how you should look for an extrathoracic shadow normally, by just tilting, twisting, you do whatever you want. Distort your mental image. It's not the image tilting, it's basically distorting your mental image. You can go for the next slide, no problem. You leave it at that. You don't have to correct it. Yeah. Now to me, tuberculosis is out simply because it is not parenchymal and bilateral disease. See, I would have considered tuberculosis if those nodules were small.
Yes. Miliary tuberculosis.
Miliary or even nodular. Sometimes, a larger miliary can be nodular also, or a fibronodular. I mean, fine. But this is more unlikely of tuberculosis in a 2-year-old child, and only this kind of presentation. Interstitial lung disease, okay. Interstitial lung disease will produce bilateral shadows, fine, fair enough. But interstitial lung disease combined with a mediastinal widening is unlikely. Remember this point. This would be a lesson. I mean, there are rare diagnoses of interstitial lung diseases with mediastinal lymphadenopathy, but you have autoimmune diseases with mediastinal lymphadenopathy with this kind of presentation. What I meant was, you can take sarcoidosis, for example. I mean, granulomatous diseases. I mean, there are multiple of them which can have this presentation. I think fair enough that COVID was considered and rolled out, and tuberculosis, question mark. Can you get lymphadenopathy plus this? Okay, we'll keep that in the mind, but the lung in between the shadows won't be that pitch dark. You have all seen tuberculosis, isn't it? None, this doesn't fit. And tell me lastly, if you go back to clinically, how many of the tuberculosis patients will be really hypoxic?
Yeah.
They won't be hypoxic. You don't see SpO2 of 87 in tuberculosis. They will die. They will die of tuberculosis much before they die of hypoxia.
That is
So therefore, to me, a predominant hypoxia is something that interstitium is affected. Now I am further supported by the fact that interstitium. Suppose if you ask me what is the next investigation you would do, I would do a CT chest, CT chest to confirm the shadows that I am looking for with further qualification. I would look at the nodes and see if there is a, surprise, what should I say, caseation, which I'm not expecting, and so many other things. I think CT would delineate the anatomy more. Should I do a bronchoscopy? Answer is no. At this stage. And I will invite others. If there are any comments, I will go to the next slide.
Srinivasan, sir.
Sorry. So no further comments. I am also thinking of and I agree with what you say. So clean plus this type of shadows, and I am also against tuberculosis, diagnosis of tuberculosis.
Okay, fine, sir. So we'll go ahead.
We'll go ahead.
Yeah.
So then we will discuss the management. So we started the child on with O2 by nasal prongs, IV fluids, and we started first with piperacillin, tazobactam, linezolid, and oral azithromycin and oseltamivir. As
you were on COVID protocol. Fine, fair enough, ma. We will understand. Okay, don't worry, we will not comment on any of the management. You are managing the child than the diagnosis.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine, no, fair enough.
Okay. Then what the CBC showed? The CBC showed thrombocytopenia with leukocytosis and with neutrophils 45%, lymphocytes 50%. Then the electrolytes showed mild hyponatremia. HGPT was slightly elevated. CRP was borderline. Urine routine was negative. Blood culture was sterile after final report was sterile. Gastric lavage for CBNAT was negative.
No, wait. Somebody's SGPT is high, again puts me in trouble, because that means you are looking at a parenchymal disease of the liver or an injury of the liver. Okay, if not the disease of the liver, it could be even injury of the liver, could be given paracetamol, you can get SGPTs going high. But given the splenomegaly is the cause in the liver for the splenomegaly is again a question, and the thrombocytopenia is a feature of hypersplenism, which was missed and maybe pre-existing, we don't know. But if you forget these 2 points, splenomegaly and thrombocytopenia and anemia, by cytopenia with splenomegaly, straight away next investigation is bone marrow. If you have 2 series being affected, you should do bone marrow, number 1. Number 2, I was to do CT for that, but now I will do bone marrow before CT, because these were not available to me. X-ray was available, CBC was projected little later. So it's like you get both of them together in the clinic, isn't it?
Yeah, so, but hemoglobin of 9.2 is very common in general population. Will you think that bicytopenia is there?
No, sir. But to me, how I look at bicytopenia is 9.2 is common, but what was the indices suggesting? You will usually get microcytic hypochromic or normocytic, normochromic. What type of hemoglobin was it? 9.2. Can I have some more inputs? Then it defines me. Like if you say microcytic hypochromic anemia in a thriving child with only grade 1 malnutrition, fine. I won't consider it as normal in presence of splenomegaly. See, we can dispatch the hemoglobins of 9, 10, and just
if there is no
suppose there is a risk setting, you don't even investigate for anemia, deworm the child and start iron is fair enough, but not in splenomegaly. And iron deficiency anemia will never cause splenomegaly.
Okay, that is good. That is good. So you are thinking of any bone marrow involvement at this stage. It is a multi-system disorder. Lungs are involved, reticular endothelial system is involved, and bone marrow is also involved. You are thinking, okay? That's fair enough.
And CRP further, CRP6 in a febrile child. You know, it is again out for many inflammatory disorders of autoimmune or probably some other disorders, unusual disorders. The list for thanks to that investigation, but with a precaution that many a times investigations cheat us. I mean to say that we please don't chase the investigation, although you take some inputs from there. Yeah.
Okay.
So we did dengue because fever with thrombocytopenia, which was negative. Fever with splenomegaly, we ruled out malaria, which was negative. COVID-19 and H1N1 both were negative. So after 72 hours, there was no improvement in fever. The respiratory distress was same. The child was taking orally with that distress, means he was not that sick. Intake was reduced, but he was taking orally. IV antibiotics, then we stepped up to IV meropenem and vancomycin. And as the chest X-ray was showing some nodular, like cotton ball appearance were also there in somewhere. So we added fluconazole also. Then CBC showed, we repeated CBC, which was somewhat same. Platelet count was a bit raised, with leukocytosis was there, and with lymphocyte predominant. Lymphocytes were 76%. Then this time we sent other etiology for the fever, like Leptospira, Brucella, HIV, Will Felix was sent. Chest X-ray we repeated this time. So this chest X-ray was showing.
Now you go back to the previous investigation, beta. Only one line from me. At least the previous was around 9. Now it is 8.6. So therefore anemia cannot be ignored. So therefore this is significant, and platelets is going up and down. Probably in falling hemoglobin with improving platelets and even rising counts would tell me that the bone marrow is repressed, then suppressed now. That means the child is having waxing and waning of bone marrow activity. That's unlikely to be from the spleen, because splenomegaly is persisting, whereas the platelet counts are fluctuating. You know, you can't have in 72 hours splenomegaly worsening. In fact, the drugs, if I were to take drug-induced effect on the counts, probably you can get more of thrombocytopenia due to drugs than thrombocyte. I mean, in relative improvement in the platelet counts. What was, if I were to make too much of imagination, I'm sorry, I may be wrong. Azithromycin somehow has some anti-inflammatory effect, and is that the one responsible for some improvement in platelets? I don't know. Or even the stimulation of the marrow due to something must have caused rise in the counts and rise in the platelets. Stimulation of the marrow, you know, that's possible. So you have bicytopenia. On one side, the bone marrow was, we were looking at suppression and then repression. You know, I will tell you, this is a misbehaving hematological series to me. So I have high index of suspicion for malignancy. What misbehaves would be malignancy, even though the counts are normal, but it could be anything. Somebody is asking for ESR. Anita, I think CRP answers ESR. ESR must be normal in this child, even though it is not. I can see that in the chat box.
Okay.
Next one.
So this was the repeat X-ray after 72 hours. So this was showing more dense opacities, homogeneous opacities, and there was no improvement in the X-ray.
Yeah. Then, once an X-ray does not respond to antibiotics that you have given, and I think you should stop antibiotics at all. I mean, boldly you can stop antibiotics. I mean, you don't have to complete 7 days course, 5 days course, or whatever. At least in this child, I do agree. I don't know, it's very difficult call. It can be taken in some tertiary centers under extraordinary situations. But at least don't make them spend on meropenem antifungals now, given that it is not responding.
Okay.
Maybe fine. I mean, this is debatable, and anyway, sometimes even I also continue.
But
Let's not
child,
go too much.
yeah.
One can be
Too
bold
much.
enough to stop. Or we consider to give him simple ceftriaxone or something, just if you want to keep.
Okay, but we probably they continued with the antibiotic, no?
Fair enough.
Yes, sir.
We continued with the antibiotic.
Continued with the antibiotics,
That's
and
okay,
antifungal was also added actually.
No problem.
Added, Okay, go ahead.
Then we reviewed the history again, because some history points that relatives didn't tell us initially, but as the child was not improving, they come up with the history. Like there was a significant family history. The child had a elder sister who was 5 years old, which needed admission for pneumonia with empyema with pneumothorax at 2 years of age, and who was treated for 18 days long course. Then there was a history of death of 2 maternal uncles, one at the 3 years of age due to typhoid with jaundice, and other at 13 years from pneumonia. So this maternal uncle's death was there in the childhood. Then we, as the history was significant, we draw the family tree of this family. This family tree, this is our patient. This is our patient, 2 years old. And this, his maternal uncle's death was there at 3 years of age, at 13 years of age. Mother's maternal uncles were also had death, one at the neonatal period and the second at the 1.5 months of age, for which the cause was not there. So this, in this family tree, the males were affected. All maternal uncles were affected. So then the two things came into our mind, like whether it is a primary immunodeficiency disorder or whether it is some inborn errors of metabolism, as there were neonatal deaths.
We thought of actually X-linked disorders, as maternal uncles were dead and their maternal uncles also were dead, the grandmothers. Okay. So that's why a primary PID was thought of X-linked recessive disorder.
Yes.
Okay. IM was less likely, but X-linked PID was thought in a big way. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Then after 7 days of the admission, the fever still continued. Distress was same. FiO2 requirement decreased a bit, but the situation was not changed much from the admission. So we repeated CBC, which was showing somewhat same picture. HB 9.8, platelet 1,01,000, total count 19,000, with again lymphocyte predominance 72%. So what next? So this time we suspected secondary HLH, as hepatosplenomegaly was there, fever was there. So infection-induced HLH we thought of. So we did the primary serum investigations. Plasma fibrinogen was low. Serum triglycerides were high. Serum ferritin was high, but it was not that sky high which we usually see in HLH. But because these two parameters were there favoring HLH, we did bone marrow. So this bone marrow showed non-normocellular marrow with adequate trialineageous hepatopoiesis with absent iron stores. So it was not showing hemophagocytes. Bone marrow biopsy was also normal, and bone marrow aspirate culture was also sterile, means it has not grown any organism also. Then
we did a CT scan also. CT scan, CT chest of. We did that?
No, sir.
Okay.
CT chest was not done.
Okay.
Now, at least to me, I will tell you my thing, beta. Okay. Rupali, I will wash up my hands that this is not a pulmonary case. First point. Okay. Probably, at least whatever we are looking, it is not a primary respiratory disease at this stage, because now it is a multi-system disease, whatever may be the condition. Point number one. Can you go back to the previous slide, please, for a while? For only 1 second. See, the bone marrow disappointing me of all my speculations of whatever malignancies, etc. Now, when you have a splenomegaly, multiple series affected in the blood, like what should I say, RBC series, platelets, and X-ray showing that picture. So this to me, if not malignancy, the next brother of malignancy, some immune disease. And secondly, it should be a disease which can cause deaths. And it should be a disease which can cause deaths in the males. So it should be a severe disease. That means it should be a disease of mutations. So, I mean, because only mutational diseases by mutations can see that severity and deaths. It will not be mild dominant diseases that can cause continued survival. So you were fair that IEM, but not the kind of IEM that you were looking in the newborn period or in the ICUs. You understand? This could be some error, but away from the routine, your amino acid, this, that, etc. All those things are not there. So this is a particular disease, X-linked. So what I will do, I will tell you. Can I tell you some cheating way that I do? If you permit me, how I cheat. What I do is I go to Google, type splenomegaly, comma. Now can you do all this exercise? Type splenomegaly, comma. What I will do, I don't know the diagnosis, but I will tell you what I will do. Type splenomegaly, comma. Type normal marrow. Then Rupali go on telling the key points. Then type normal marrow, splenomegaly.
Google.
Then bilateral opacities on the chest X-ray, comma. You are doing it online, huh? I'm sorry. See, sometimes when there is lacks of diseases and rare diseases, we can't remember all those diseases to make a diagnosis. Let's understand. Is it possible to read the entire Bible and come and make a diagnosis? It's not possible. So if you type all of them, you will get at least some search points. So it will shortlist your thinking because you allow the Google to think, not you. So basically what happens is you see what comes on top. But your key words that you type are very important. It should be first, we should not write inguinal lymphadenopathy of 1 centimeter. Then type means it will go elsewhere. Google doesn't know. Google is not clinician. Only clinician should smartly use Google. Now, what is the dominant feature in this child is bilateral lung opacities, lymphadenopathy, comma, splenomegaly, comma, normal marrow. So plus X-linked and deaths in the family. If you type all this, I don't know what disease you will get. If anybody got any diagnosis, I will mute. You can tell me. I don't know. I am not able to do it online now.
Okay, but what we thought is that it was an X-linked recessive disorder, which has killed his maternal uncles and their maternal uncles. Okay, then actually we have consulted Dr. Khubchandani at this point of time. Right, Rupali?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At this point of time.
At this point of time, and giving all this history, and we thought of HLH, we have given IVIG, we have given steroids after that, and child was not improving, and they were worried about. Then, as child was mildly stable, it has shifted to me from this point of time. Yes, Rupali?
After that, we did some investigations. We did, sir.
We'll continue with the investigations.
Okay. So date 11 of admission, the fever still was persistent, distress was same, everything was same. Leptospira, till that time the reports were came and which were negative, Leptospira, brucella.
But I think Leptospira, brucella, HIV, Wellplex will not into all this. This is not.
But multisystem disorder we thought of. For the cause of fever with respiratory involvement, we actually investigated. So then after 10 days of admission, the child was not improving. So we planned PID workup to be done, IVIG to be given, and bronchoscopy with BAL. But there were some difficulties for this plan because of the COVID situation, we were unable to transfer the sample across the state for the PID workup. And bronchoscopy was not advised that on this stage because it was a aerosol generating procedure. So what we did, we sent the immunoglobulins we collected the sample for PID workup. We stored it. Then we gave IVIG 1 gram per kg for over 2 days. We added amikacin, oral septang, thinking of the another any atypical organism like PCP. Then we started him on IV voriconazole in place of fluconazole. And after that, fever frequency was reduced, but intensity was still same. Then we thought to do BAL. Then bronchoscopy was done on day 14. And after that, till that time, immunoglobulin report was there, which was normal, means expected result. IgA was high, IgM was high, and means it was, means he was responding. Immunoglobulins were normal. The BAL culture showed two organisms, Klebsiella and Aspergillus. This Klebsiella was sensitive to colistin, so we started him on colistin on day 15. And after that, the patient was transferred back to Corecer for further management, along with the samples collected for PID workup in proper packing in vaccine carrier.
Yeah.
So now Corecer will take over.
And Nani has absolutely rightly said it is fungal infection. We thought of that, Nani Udikar, and that's why voriconazole was added in that. Aspergillus is very much sensitive to voriconazole, and Sai Prasad has commented about the chronic granulomatous disease. Is absolutely right, because we are thinking of X-linked recessive disorder, which is PID workup. And the child was admitted with me with voriconazole and colistin sulfate. We continued with that, and he improved partially, and we discharged the child. But again, he came back after 8 days in a very bad condition, hypoxic, and child has succumbed to septic shock in my hospital. And then with lot of difficulty, we convinced them to do a PID workup, giving concession even our hospital bill and all that. Storage, it was a not huge hepatomegaly, it was only 3 centimeter. So we'll go slow, go previous slide, previous one, yeah, previous one. So we think of X-linked recessive disorder like this. Next slide. Yeah. Most of the X-linked recessive, most common is the chronic granulomatous disease, as one case we have discussed last time, CGD disorder.
Yes.
X-linked gamma globulin, Wiskott Aldrich, but he didn't have any eczema. Thrombocytopenia was there. Next. And there are few more. We are not aware of this, all the disorder. Then what we did a panel workup for clinical exome sequencing, which we have sent to MedGenome. We're taking all concession because child was already died, and we have a report now of that. Next slide, Rupal. Yeah.
Yes.
And they have suggested that it is likely pathogenic mutation, X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. There are two syndromes, X-linked lymphoproliferative 1 and 2, but this child was fitting it, aspergillosis was fitting into chronic granulomatous disease. In chronic granulomatous disease, we get aspergillus fungal infection, and they succumb to this. But it turned out to be something different, a cousin brother of chronic granulomatous disease, X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. And we have conveyed this to the family, and now we are ready to do further workup in a mother and father, mainly mother, basically in mother. And then we'll do that, we'll confirm this mutation in a mother, and then this will help in the next pregnancy, because there were only 2 children, and now one is alive, one girl is alive, one their boy has died, and next pregnancy we might give them a normal child or normal male child, depending upon the corniculus biopsy or amniocentesis, and to find out that mutation. So this has helped us in arriving a proper diagnosis, and we are given this booklet to them. And this is a very good booklet for family also and for doctors also. You can go through it. This is available on web, and you can download it. Any questions from the participants or from Dr. Subramanian?
Actually, it's a very excellent case. But Kore sir, you have taken so much of pains and efforts. I would have been happy if you could have saved the child and subjected for either stem cell therapy or
We
probably
talked to them while discharging on a first time. We talked to them about the stem cell therapy and bone marrow transplant therapy, and they were ready actually. But child again succumbed. They came in a bad state, septic shock, and we cannot survive that child. Very unfortunate. But the next time we'll be very careful, and we have promised them that we'll give a normal baby to them in the next pregnancy. Because we have a mutation now, we'll confirm this mutation in a mother, and then we'll go ahead.
And if I were to learn where I was misled was also because of the mediastinal lymphadenopathy, like picture and bilateral opacities. I was thinking splenomegaly. I was going towards malignancy. Okay. Now, if I retrospectively look back, I mean, lessons that I have learned is that if the host is immunocompromised, you may not get all the classical features like classical fever, and all the responses or all the predictions that you would get, even the counts, everything could be abnormal if there is immunodeficiency. You can never know. So that's somewhere the clinical features also will be modified a lot. At least to think upfront rare diseases like this would be very difficult, because I don't dare to diagnose, because often we diagnose but they may not be correct. So that's the point.
And the Apple team has done a lot of efforts to take a proper history. They have done a family tree. That was the clinching. Means with that we could come to that it is an X-linked recessive disorder. And thanks to them.
Can I make a comment?
CT was done, sir. Asking.
Srinivas, sir, comment.
Actually, when I saw this X-ray picture and then the lungs are not having any specific finding, so I was thinking it could be, and I was wondering why the history, skin condition, any skin abscess or subcutaneous abscess or eczema or petechia was not mentioned, whether in the history. And of course, finally everything clinches on history. Family history of so many male deaths, especially from the mother's side, definitely says X-linked this thing. So naturally there are so many X-linked immunodeficiency disorders. With silent chest with so many findings, X-ray findings, invariably you have to think of immunodeficiency.
And secondly, in immunodeficiencies or those syndromes, cervical lymphadenopathy is more predominant than...
Not necessary. Actually, lymphadenopathy may not. They usually think skin conditions, if it is a viscous allergy syndrome, there will be definite evidence of this thing.
Eczema.
Bleeding tendencies and this thing. If it is chronic granulomatous disease, there will be staphylococcus subcutaneous abscess or this thing. Or some liver abscess or splenic abscess.
What was the BCG scar like in this child? There was...
Yes, there was a BCG scar, sir.
Okay.
There was a BCG scar.
Manudekar want to say.
Yeah, sir. There are a couple of things. Like see a fungal infection in a neonate where there is thrombocytopenia with hypoglycemia. This child persisted to have thrombocytopenia, which is not a very common thing to have in a fungal infection in slightly older age, like this child had. Does it have any correlation with the fungal infection which this child ultimately had? He had aspergillus, right? So, do you often see this thrombocytopenia with fungal infection in slightly elderly kids, not in the neonate? Neonate, we definitely know hypoglycemia along with the thrombocytopenia, and the child is otherwise not looking very sick, and the sepsis is ruled out. Then fungal sepsis is one thing which we definitely keep in mind. So, will you give a credence to that thrombocytopenia?
Actually, thrombocytopenia was seen in the then it has come to more than 1 lakh. That is why it was misleading.
Yeah, but still on a lower side.
So the lower side is normal. And neutrophils suddenly from 46, it has come down and lymphocyte became predominant.
Yeah, second thing is, sir,
so much of lung shadows with no findings like repetitions or any other advantages found.
Yeah, that is one another thing which tells us that this was mostly atypical lung infection, where clinically the child is not having any signs. In fact, last time also we had discussed in our case where this child had Aspergillus pneumonia, where this child did not have too many clinical signs.
Yeah,
It was just
exactly.
the X-ray which showed us the shadows.
Yeah.
So there we have to think, as Dr. Subramaniam has already said, that I will stop my antibiotics and I will think of something else. And what Dr. Ambekar sir says, if you are changing antibiotic for the third time, change your diagnosis, not the antibiotic. So this was very true in this case also.
Yeah.
Couple of
Venkatesh
comments
is
from
there?
me on lung infections and fungal infections and the lung.
No, if only the family history is given of so many deaths, immediately we would have come to the conclusion it's immunodeficiency disorder.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the most clinching thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Actually, in this thing, clinical clues discussion also, I was mentioning, history is very important, when coming to diagnosis.
That family history and family tree has gave us a clue. We are dealing with some X-linked disorder.
A couple of comments from me on fungal infections. They would cause eosinophilia before thrombocytopenia. Point number 1. Point number 2, you may see sometimes immunoglobulin aberrations like hyper IgE, etc. presenting, just for completion for everyone. Localized fungal infections can happen in pre-existing cavities. Bilateral fungal diseases will speak of immunodeficiencies. Fungal infections tend to be invasive and diffuse and bilateral if they are immunodeficient. And newborn is an immunodeficient compared to an older child. So older child will be immunocompetent, and therefore you will see localized fungal infections. Lastly, fungal infections can be either in the airways or otherwise. If they are in the airways, generally they are commensals and they don't do much, because you may get a fungus. If you just do ball, you may grow a fungus, and I will tell you, it can be there like many organisms, like your Klebsiella in the throat, pneumococcus in the throat, it can be there. Aspergillus is one which is of importance as a differential diagnosis of asthma in older wheezing child as bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. So therefore, when you are looking at this X-ray as a fungal disease, that itself will be a pointer to a kind of a setting of a primary immunodeficiency, because the fungal infection tends to be invasive and severe because the infection is unchecked, and therefore it becomes invasive and severe and bilateral. Otherwise, in an adult, in a pre-existing tubercular cavity, you will see fungal balls. So that is because they are immunocompetent and they can contain. So in an younger child, you would see this presentation. These are only few comments on, not related to this case, in general approach to a fungal disease.
Okay, and Dr. Suhas Kulkarni is asking why it is not a viral infection. On X-ray wise, you are thinking of fungal infection. Whether we can think of viral infection, some viral infection which can go like
infection, of course, Subramaniam will tell. But viral infection usually will have from the hilum, it will be going towards the periphery as of this thing. The most of the viral infection, interstitial type of pneumonitis, more shadows will be there in the hilar area, and then they will be going
at
away
the
from
hilar
the
area.
hilum, bilaterally. And there will be air trapping because of this thing.
And somebody in the chat box asked why fungal infection but not responded to antifungals. It is simply because if the child is immunodeficient, bacterial infections don't respond to antibiotics, viral infections don't respond to antivirals, and fungal infections don't respond to antifungals. So you may require,
one more important point I want to make, that is in a child who is having a male deaths, especially from the mother's side, and it shows X-linked. So if the child doesn't have any bleeding tendencies or eczema, or subcutaneous abscess or otitis media, we can rule out this thing, Scott-Albrecht syndrome and chronic granulomatous disease. So then, of course, we have to think of this condition again. Yeah.
Okay.
Because invariably those things will be present before 2 years of age.
If somebody asks viral infections, I would say you can think of COVID than other viruses right now. In a lighter way.
That is true. Yeah, that is exactly changing the whole picture of this thing, thinking. Because of, and also...
further on COVID, only 2 lines. Dr. Mahesh, you were seeing very early in the March, but now we know that this bilateral, subpleural opacifications that we see are more in adults than in children.
Okay.
Not that characteristic in children. And So therefore, children will have the COVID presentations like any other disease. I mean, unlike an adults, like you see, many things in adults are not same in children. So same way.
Okay, sir. Anybody wants to comment? Venkatesh is there. He has managed the
yes,
test.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, your comment. Yeah, can you comment something? You are
Sir,
thinking-
no, Rupali has covered like both of this part, our part actually.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Somebody was asking about role of steroids. I'm seeing the chat box. Steroids, no, unless you think of an inflammatory setting where inflammation is causing more damage than the benefit. I mean, that is a kind of a dilemma or an ethical situation, or a predominantly eosinophilic inflammation where the damage to the lungs is more than otherwise. So no to steroids, at least before doing bone marrows, no steroids. I mean, if at all you are giving, then at least not give before you do one good bone marrow and rule out malignancy.
So the other thing is, every time we should always be doing an ESR, which will give us an idea at least whether we are dealing with inflammatory or long-standing infection. So when we do the CBC, ESR also would definitely help us, especially inflammatory situations where the ESR would be in hundreds.
3 digits, yeah, you want to say.
Yeah.
Non-medical, the point here is that I would say a short-acting ESR is CRP and a long-acting CRP is ESR. So therefore, they have done the CRP.
ESR,
no point.
ESR also done. It was on the 5T and 4T.
Yeah.
I'm sure ESR would have been done.
That is,
Yes.
Sir, we have done that. It was 30 or 40. That's why it was not.
Yeah,
Vijay
because
Kadi
it was
Patta.
mentioned because it was normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was slightly elevated.
Vijay's Kadi Patta.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very
yeah.
informative case. Yesterday, of course, we were there in the panel on immunodeficiency disorders. Actually, I was discussing on this syndrome and both X-linked conditions, chronic granulomatous disease. So I was thinking, no, my mind is towards that because, of course, she was not there, and then they mentioned anything about the skin condition or any other area of involvement earlier in the past. That is why we have to think of some other possibilities.
Yeah. In this child, there was no skin involvement. Skin was absolutely normal.
What is wonderful to me see is that this case went from a pediatrician to a tertiary care center and managed there, but for diagnosis it came back to the pediatrician in a lighter way. Sir, so therefore compliments to you. So therefore we mean that the diagnoses are always made by pediatricians than the setups. So it is because the thinking is, I'm sorry, I'm not doing any.
No, sir, it's okay, sir.
I do understand the responsibility taken by the tertiary institutions. Even I am in a tertiary institution. We manage them. But often it will be very nice for that tertiary institute to call the primary pediatrician, ask him what he was thinking. Maybe the answer lies not just in the mother, maybe in the primary pediatrician who has seen the case. He will really have some hint or some clue to give, because we will be lost with antibiotics and host of drugs, list of drugs and list of investigations.
But I have one question to ask. This family issue was specifically mentioned in the last for the presentation sake, or it was not elicited at all earlier?
Yeah. No. The story we have to, it is like storytelling as we have gone through this in this child.
No. Sometimes
Initially, they didn't
family
really
things have been taken. You would have kept it as a trump card.
No, sir. It was not a trump card because they only elicited the story after the child was not improving, and we are immediately asking.
Yeah, we can understand that. Yeah. If it had been initially given by the mother herself,
then it would have been very.
Think would have been different. Different. Thank you.
Sir,
I thank you very much for allowing me to be here to listen to this interesting.
It's our pleasure, sir.
Sir, yeah, I've got some comment to make. Mahesh, you have rightly pointed out that these people from Apple have already charted the family tree. Now, this reminds me of a very good oration given by Dr. Farooq Udwadia in a critical care conference. we had no correlation critical care conference, which was for adults. But Dr. Udodi had come to Kolhapur and he gave an oration. I've got a clipping for that. What was important was what he told us was, whenever there is a patient who is continuing for more than 6 to 7 days, it is always better to write down your thoughts after 7 to 8 days of his hospitalization as to what was the initial complaints, what was the finding initially, and how this patient has progressed. And now what are the clinical thoughts we have got, and it should make you think how we can proceed with the diagnosis. So suppose in case we go wrong on the diagnosis, but our approach is correct, then two things. One is we know for sure that we have tried to manage this particular patient in a proper way. Yeah. And second, if those thoughts are put on paper in the era of the CPA, it is always better that yes, we have put these thoughts on paper. So if you add three things together, the history, the family tree, and the child who is not responding to the standard antibiotics, then your thought process of the PID will definitely come forth, which will tell us that probably we have a proper the proper methodology with which we can diagnose the patient. So I think what was done was absolutely perfect. But I thought this thought process by Dr. Farooq Udwadia, all of us know what
Farooq Udwadia stands for. Very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To summarize, I will tell you the story. Initially, we thought of COVID like this. We drifted from that to the tuberculosis. Then he was not responding, Sabinette was positive, and this family history has come up. And then we consulted Dr. Khubchandani. And in a first shot, he said that we are dealing with the PIT, most likely to be chronic granulomatous. And that made us to think of sending this blood to the PID welcome. I should thank Dr. Raju Khubchandani in this platform that he has led us to think of PID in this case. Thank you, sir.
Rupali and Mahesh Kore sir, can I share 3 or 4 slides?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this takes us to a question: is clinical diagnosis enough at times? We depend on investigations. Yeah. But remember, the diagnosis is always an illusion. What I think of diagnosis may not be the one you think, and therefore, when you refer to others, you will always get the appropriate answer. And you have to depend on some tertiary centers for making the final diagnosis at times.
Yeah.
Have a team approach. A team approach may not be across the specialty. Even it could be call up or IAP team. Call up all of you when there is a difficult case, and one will take family history, one will take personal history, one will take past history. And little extra effort is required when there is no money. And that's exactly what Dr. Kore has done. He requested them to do diagnosis even after the death. Be cautious when you diagnose rarity. And that's the simplest thing that I can tell you. Expect the unexpected. And that's very important in our clinical medicine. And lastly, keep doing the good work without expectations. God has been kind to us. Let's be kind to the others. And don't do too much. This takes me to much is too much on thinking or otherwise. Stay safe and be happy, and thank you very much. So I'm just telling you a few pearls from my last oration that look relevant to this particular case and flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Srinivas, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for allowing me to be there.
Thank
you. Very, very educative case. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivas, sir, for joining us.
Thank you,
Subramaniam, sir, for giving the time. And thank you, Rupali madam, for a nice presentation, and Mahesh Kore sir for managing this tough case. Thank you. And here we conclude this section. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much, sir. Srinivasan.
Thank you.
Rupali, excellent presentation, beta.
Yeah.
Okay,
very educative case.
And Kore sir, thank you so much. I think we can refer the cases.
Hello, have sent this thing, hyper IgM syndrome to both Dr. Sagar Bhattad as well as to Dr. Mukesh Desai.
Yeah.
But this is the first time I'm seeing IgM case, hyper IgM case. Thank you.
This is X-linked lymphopoietic.
No, it's linked, yeah, but one of the this thing, hyper
Yeah,
IgM states, yeah.
Yeah. Hyper IgM. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good night. Good night.
Good
everyone.
night.
Thank you.